would you say the worst thing about death is? Because there's a lot of arguments. You could say it's the worms that are going to be crawling through your skeleton. You could say it's possibly having a mortician who's going through a dry spell. But I think by far the worst thing about death is the small possibility that you could be buried alive. Now imagine being buried 6 feet under, and the only way out is to claw your way through a wooden board. And if you somehow do that, you still have God knows how many pounds of dirt above you, all while running out of oxygen. And that's what I want to talk about today. People who have been buried alive. See, being buried alive used to be a lot more common because in the absence of medical technology and morgues, ways of determining whether somebody actually really died ranged from pinching them to burning them. Yeah, not the best methods. But you can't know for certainty that somebody's actually dead by using those barbaric methods, because what if they're paralyzed? What if they're in a coma? What if they're taking a 21-day nap because their team dropped a crypto scam? These are all instances where you could be buried alive under false pretenses. Luckily, today we have much better methods of being able to tell if somebody's actually dead, so the chances of you waking up underneath this set of beast games is very unlikely. But that's not to say that being buried alive these days never happens. So let's take a look at some of the most ridiculous instances, both old and new, of people being buried alive. Starting with Angelo Hayes. In 1939, 19-year-old Frenchman Angelo Hayes had a major motorcycle accident that resulted in serious head and face injuries. Injuries so extensive that he soon was declared dead and buried 3 days later. When an insurance company became suspicious about his death, Angelo's father just had recently taken out life insurance for his son. They asked to exhume, aka dig up, the body. With all the discourse going on right now between health insurance companies and how they're scammers, as well as most insurance companies in general, it does not surprise me in the slightest that they sent a life insurance agent to this family's house and asked, a grieving family, by the way, their son just died in a motorcycle accident, and they sent an agent to their house to dig up the body to make sure he doesn't have a pulse so they don't have to pay out the family. Honey, why is Jake from State Farm at our front door right now with a shovel? Honey, why is the Geico lizard in our front yard in a mini excavator? They asked to dig up the body only to find out Angelo's body was still warm. We're not entirely sure what happened, but it's possible that Angelo was simply in a coma, so he was able to survive on very little oxygen, because obviously when you're buried alive, there's barely any oxygen, and I guess if you're in a coma, you don't require that much oxygen. That begs the question to me though, was this family scamming? Like, did they pull some David Blaine shit and they just had their son pull some magic trick in order to get some insurance money? Because that's commitment right there, if so. And if that insurance agent gave Angelo CPR, right, he just revived them. Say Angelo was actually dead, right? He revives Angelo with CPR for the sole reason that he does not want to have to pay this family out. Not that he's doing it. Obviously, it's the company that's paying the family out. But does that make this insurance agent a scammer? Or does it make him a hero? Imagine showing up to your first day on the job as a Geico life insurance agent, and you're going through training and you think you're going to be, in some office or some shit with computers, and they hand you a fucking shovel and a CPR dummy. Oh, no. Your job is actually to bring people back to life so we don't have to pay out their families. These motherfuckers are going to figure out immortality just to avoid paying out a customer. Regardless, swift medical intervention ensured his recovery, and he went on to live for many more years. He even invented his very own security coffin, packed with a small oven, refrigerator, and a hi-fi cassette player, and he toured country fairs showing it off. Good for Angelo. That's a hell of a comeback story. Another insane case of somebody being buried alive is Saint Oran of Iona. Hope I'm saying that right. As late as the 19th century, human sacrifices were sometimes used when the foundation for a new building was laid. This practice was founded on the belief that the deceased, who might be murdered if he or she was an unwilling participant, could hold up the building if he or she were buried underneath a foundation stone. That's up. I wonder how many buildings in America we unwillingly have somebody buried holding it up underneath it. That's creepy as shit. I would imagine it's mostly like religious monuments, but who knows? There might be a fucking Carl's Jr. with some dude holding it up underneath. According to myth, the Christian druid Saint Oran of the Scottish island of Iona made an offer to his mentor, Saint Columba. When Saint Columba was building Iona Abbey in 563 AD, Saint Oran offered to let Saint Columba bury him alive in order to bless the abbey. So he willingly volunteered to be buried alive to impress his mentor, I guess. And then Saint Oran was buried alive, but his fellow churchmen kindly spared him, eventually digging him out. Saint Oran claimed he had experienced visions of the afterlife, which should have delighted the churchmen. Unfortunately, his visions had included neither heaven nor hell, because his accounts were unfavorable to the Christian faithful. The churchmen then buried Saint Oran again. This time, they left him to die. So he volunteered to be buried alive. They dug him up because they felt bad. And then he said, I saw the afterlife. Jesus wasn't there. They fucking buried him again. That is messed up. Plus, being buried alive in 563 is way worse than being buried alive in 2025. Because in 563, you lay there with your thoughts. But in 2025, you might have your phone in your pocket, maybe even have some portable chargers. If you happen to be captured on your way to a camping trip, you could use your phone for like a week. You could just watch Corey Kenshin videos until you starve to death. But not every buried alive nightmare is an accident or some sort of ritual. Because in 2022, a 42-year-old woman from Washington, her estranged husband was unwilling to accept their separation, and he ambushed her in her own home. He attacked her, restrained her with duct tape, and then covered her head to prevent her from calling for help or escaping. After immobilizing her, he drove her deep into the woods. There he dug a shallow grave and buried her alive, placing a heavy tree on top of her to further ensure that she would not be able to escape, leaving her to what he believed would be a slow and inevitable death. However, despite her injuries and the weight of the earth pressing down on her, she managed to breathe by squirming to keep the dirt from suffocating her as she lay in the shallow grave for several hours before finally succeeding in tearing off the tape. That's some Navy SEAL shit right there, though. Rapidly running out of oxygen while you're calm enough to undo your restraints. I just know that bitch was kinky as hell. She took off running for about 30 minutes and found a home where at 1 a.m. young Anne banged on the door pleading for help because her husband was trying to kill her. Duct tape still wrapped around her neck, lower face, and ankles. The police eventually showed up, and her estranged husband was later apprehended, faced charges, ensuring justice for the whole ordeal that he inflicted on her. Which I'm surprised they answered the door, because imagine seeing some disheveled woman at 1 a.m. just knocking on your door acting all crazy. I personally, I'm turning my white noise app, max volume, going back to sleep. People actually feared being buried alive so much that there has been several coffins created with this dreadful possibility in mind, like this 1868 patent filed by a man by the name of Franz Vester, in which it has a bell, a ladder, and an air vent. I could see that air vent backfiring tremendously, though. Like, imagine that TikTok girl with the ring light and the Fabuloso shows up, starts shooting pink chemicals all over the dude's gravestone, and it clogs his oxygen pipe, and his last moments are just him stuck in a fucking coffin choking on her pink chemicals as she's fucking twerking above him. And then you have this horrific thing, which was invented in 1882 by John Critchbaum, which by turning that T-shaped handle, it lets air into the coffin. This one kind of sucks. I prefer the other one, honestly. This one's just like, it doesn't, I don't know, just not liking the design. And then you have this super complicated one, which was made in 1885 by Charles Sealer and Frederick Bontrager. And I'm just going to have to read this one word for word because I cannot comprehend what this is. The invention provides for improvements in the important components of previous buried alive inventions. In this instance, motion of the body triggers a clockwork-driven fan, which will force fresh, breathable air into the coffin instead of the passive air pipe. See, I like that because it prevents the TikTok grave cleaning lady from sabotaging this guy and giving him somehow a worse death than being buried alive. The device also includes a battery-powered alarm. According to the patent, when the hand is moved, the exposed part of the wire will come in contact with the body, completing the circuit between the alarm and the ground to the body in the coffin. The alarm will sound. There is also a spring-loaded rod which will raise up, carrying feathers or other signals. Additionally, this is like some fucking Jimmy Neutron shit right here. Additionally, a tube is positioned over the face of the buried body so that a lamp may be introduced down the tube, and a person looking down through the tube can see the face of the body in the coffin. That is frightening. That is by far the most intricate one. I'm sure that one is very, very expensive. And then you have this one too, which is unrelated to being buried alive, but I just think it's pretty interesting. It's a solar-powered music player patented by John Knight in 2015 that allows both the person in the coffin and maybe potential visitors or whatever to listen to music. So it charges up via the sun and then just basically just plays music forever. But all in all, reading this shit has made me extremely thankful to be born in this century, because yeah, we have our issues. We got inflation making quality of life pretty difficult for people. We have the looming threat of nuclear fallout, but overall, we're not getting buried alive, so could be a lot worse. Anyways, that is all. Thank you guys so much for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.